We will have time at the end to answer questions, and I'll be pausing at a few spots in the presentation to take questions as well. And if you have a question, feel free to put it in chat. We'll keep track of those, and at the end, we'll refer to the chat and address questions that way. Quickly, just wanted to cover why we're here today. We are here to share information about the Home Help program with you all. We want to explain how the process works overall, explain the setup process and how to get set up for payment, and then provide some tips on completing the documents that are requested and also tips on communicating with our team. So we're here to share information and have a conversation. We hope you have some questions for us too. So just a brief overview of our agenda. We're going to start with um, a welcome and some information from Mark, and then we're going to go into an overview of the Home Help program. Next, we'll cover payee setup and verification process, touch on communications, and then we'll have time for questions as well. All right, well, first, welcome, Mark Brunner. Thank you for being here. I'm going to turn it over to you to share some words, and I will go ahead and drive the slides. So just let me know how to navigate.
And thank you for co-hosting the webinar as part of Minnesota Housing's outreach effort and for working with community owners and residents on the program. Minnesota's the large, you can move to the next slide. So Minnesota's the largest source of non-subsidized affordable housing are manufactured homes, and for many people, this represents the difference between realizing the dream of home ownership versus remaining perpetual renters. Manufactured homes account for nearly 25% of all owner-occupied units considered affordable for families earning less than half of the area's median income. You could jump to the next. The industry in Minnesota employs about 3,000 workers at about 1,200, mostly small businesses across Minnesota. There are 14 factories or plants building modular homes in Minnesota. Many of them are smaller. The larger ones, 4 of them, also build manufactured homes. You can jump to the next slide. And there are nearly 1,000 privately owned manufactured home communities throughout Minnesota, which is about 50,000 home sites or 180,000 Minnesotans who live in manufactured home communities. About 90% of these communities are located in greater Minnesota. 10% are in the metro area. In the metro area, we tend to see some of the larger communities in the state, however. You can jump to the next slide. And so an interesting statistic about manufactured homes is that about 85% of the new homes that we build and sell in Minnesota are affixed to real property and financed with more of a traditional or a conventional type mortgage. The remaining 15% are on leased land or in communities. All are classified as single family residential dwellings, and those that are affixed to real property are eligible for Minnesota Housing first-time home buyer and down payment assistance.
Looks like we may have lost connection. Mark,
Okay, thank you. Mark, I think you got muted. Could you just unmute yourself, please?
Okay, perfect. Are we set?
Sorry. Thank you.
Okay. Jump ahead one more slide. There we are. Okay. So as far as our collaboration and working on this program, thank you, Minnesota Housing, for specifically including manufactured home communities and residents as a part of HomeHelpMN. In 2021, our association testified before a public hearing regarding the proposed program as it was coming together, and suggested that there needed to be some clarity to ensure that community owners and residents were included and that they qualified for mortgage assistance, not only for real property or conventional mortgages, but also for assistance for personal property loans or those homes in communities. And we thank you for doing that. And at one final point, I'd really encourage those of you who are participating today who are community owners to reach out to your residents with this information, make them aware of the program, whether they need assistance in paying for a delinquent mortgage, or if it's lot rent or some other type of pandemic-related expense that they're having trouble addressing. Reach out to them. Minnesota Housing is familiar with manufactured home communities and manufactured housing overall. They also implement, as some of you know, the infrastructure grant program. They're involved in the relocation trust fund in terms of if there's a community closure, and providing the relocation assistance for displaced residents. And a 2023 bill moving through the legislature right now would actually turn the entire relocation trust fund program over to Minnesota Housing to do the collection as well as the implementation, something that we're supportive of. So again, thank you, Minnesota Housing, for sponsoring the webinar and involving us.
Great. Thanks, Mark. Thanks for your partnership. Appreciate it, all the work you're doing. I just want to pause there. Any questions from participants that you want to ask now of Mark before we dive into the home help overview? All right, we'll have time at the end too. And don't hesitate to use the chat with any questions or things you want to include. We'll be able to pick those up. All right, so next I will cover an overview of the Home Help program.
All right, well.
Quick reminder to mute yourself. We will mute folks as needed, but try to keep yourselves on mute. All right. Slides will cooperate here. There we go. So HomeHelpMN was launched in May of 2022. And funds are still available for Minnesotan homeowners. Applications are being accepted as long as we have funds available. And when funds are running out, we will take applications on a wait list. So the main thing we want to get across is funds are still available now. We're taking applications. We will move to a wait list as needed. We also want to let folks know that homeowners should not wait to apply. If they're delinquent, they should apply now. This image here can be found on our website at homehelpmn.org/dashboard, and it shows a few important things. One is the number of applications we received. So we're over 10,000 applications received so far. We've received applications from every county in the state. It has some information about demographics. And then that green bar shows what percentage of funds have been reserved for applications currently being processed. So as long as that bar is less than 100%, we have funds available. So that's something you can keep your eye on if you'd like, but we expect to take applications for at least another 6 weeks. Now let's talk about what the program is. Home Help Minnesota can assist homeowners with up to $50,000 to pay eligible past due expenses. Funds are paid directly to the debt holder, mortgage servicer, or county, and the funds do not need to be paid back. There are some eligibility requirements. So to be eligible for the program, the applicant needs to own and live in their home full-time, meet income requirements, have experienced a qualified financial hardship, be past due on housing-related expenses. And to see the full list of eligibility details, you can see our website here, homehelpmn.org, and I'll cover a few of these in detail in just a second. So this program does have income limits, and income is defined and based on income of the household, so all residents 18 or older. The income limits are based on 100% of the area median income and vary by county of residence. In Minnesota, the income limit in all counties is at least $90,000 or more annually, with several counties being higher than $90,000. So folks qualifying for this program have to earn a household income of less than that amount, and you can find the income limits on our website by county and by household size. Here's a list of eligible expenses. I think most relevant for our conversation today is that lot rent payments and manufactured housing loan payments are eligible. Property taxes and homeowners insurance are also eligible. Same with condo association fees, tribal land lease payments, and a few others. To be eligible for the program, applicants need to have a qualified financial hardship related to the COVID pandemic. So this is pretty broadly defined as a reduction of income or an increase in living expenses after January 21st, 2020, and related to the pandemic. So for example, if an applicant had their work hours reduced, that would qualify as a financial hardship, or increased expenses due to childcare or medical attention, that would also qualify. It's pretty broadly defined. Applicants do not need to have been sick from COVID, and most people have been affected by the pandemic and will likely meet this requirement. There's 3 ways to apply for the program. You can apply online through our website, and that's our preferred application method. Applicants can also apply over the phone by calling our call center or by mailing or faxing in a paper application. The application process doesn't always follow a linear path, but in general, these are the steps that occur after an application is submitted. So shortly after submitted, a processor reviews the application for completeness, and often more information is needed from the applicant, and the processor reaches out to the applicant to request this information. At the same time, the team works to set up the payee and get them approved for payment. And once additional information has been received and the payee has completed the setup paperwork, the processor will send a verification to the payee to confirm the amount needed to reinstate that account. Then the team reviews for completeness and accuracy, so a second review occurs. And then payment is processed and sent by check or ACH directly to the payee. We'll talk a little more specifically in just a minute about those payee setup and verification processes. All right, so let's dive into the payee setup and verification process. Just a note that we also refer to a payee as a third party and as a vendor, so you may hear and see those words as well. All right, so HomeHelpMN assistance is paid directly to the party owed. After an application is submitted, the Home Help team sends setup forms to the payee based on the email, the fax, or the address listed on the account statements that the applicant provides. So 2 documents are sent to the payee: the third-party vendor payee intake form. We'll call this the intake form going forward. It's got a long name. And the IRS form W-9. So the documents need to be completed and signed and returned. So that intake form needs to be completed, the W-9, And then also, if the payee wants to be receiving payment through ACH, we also need a copy of a voided check. So those documents, once they're sent over to you, need to be returned within 15 days to this email, so info@homehelpmn.org, or by fax. You can see the fax number there. Maybe Karen and Annie, you can help put these in the chat too, and we can reread them as we head towards the end of our conversation too. So this is an image of the intake form that is used to get set up for payment. So note the email at the top, that info@homehelpmn.org. That's the email you can use if you have questions. And this form needs to be completed and returned within 15 days. These forms are required for us to be able to make payment, and so no funds will be sent or processed without completion of these forms. The first thing this form asks is that you check the correct vendor payee type. So likely, just a reminder to mute yourself. Karen or Annie, if you could help me mute folks. So the first question you'll want to check is what sort of payee type you are. So likely manufactured or mobile home loan servicer or lot owner / ground rent lessor. So check that first. And then you'll enter your vendor name, and that should be your official business name and your full mailing address. Next on the form, you'll want to enter the primary contact information for who on your team we should communicate with, and the best contact email, phone, and fax number. Make sure you include an email that is checked regularly because the documents will be sent there and need quick turnaround, quick attention. And then also on this form, you'll be asked to provide your federal and state ID numbers. And then finally, you'll select if you want to receive payment by check or by ACH. Either one works. So if you choose check, make sure you send or you provide the address where you want the check mailed to. And if you're requesting payment by ACH, you'll need to complete the ACH information and provide that voided check. And this information is verified before payment is issued. So if it needs to be accurate, this ACH information and match that voided check. Okay, I want to pause there. That's a lot of information on the vendor intake form. What questions do you have about that form or anything I've covered so far? And I'll take a peek at the chat too. So I see a question about can property taxes be included if they're due May 15th? Not until they're past due. So unfortunately, you would not be able to include them until after that due date. A question from Tina about what is the turnaround time? Oh, go ahead.
Expire.
Sorry, can you say the whole thing again?
I muted. I did not find this lease expire. I'm sending that email, but let me look it up. Okay.
Okay, I'm gonna pause here. I think there was a conversation going. Okay, so what is the turnaround time for app to payment? Tricky question to answer. All are different. We do pay out portions of applications as they're ready for payment. So if an applicant has requested assistance for lot rent, plus taxes, plus homeowners insurance, we'll issue payment as those become ready and available. Depends on how complete the application is, depends on the response time to get payees set up and verify the account. So it really depends. I think the least amount of time is about 6 weeks, I would say. If folks are facing imminent risk, we do prioritize those. But the timeline really depends on a number of factors. How many times can people apply? Good question. There's no limit. You have to meet the eligibility, and you have to have a second or ongoing COVID impact to apply again. So that's one of the criteria. So if you were funded and then you fall behind again or become delinquent on another account, you can apply again. You just have to attest to having a new or another or an ongoing COVID impact, and again, meet all the other eligibility criteria. Caroline asks, is there a get ready checklist? Yep, we'll tell you about that in just a little bit. Okay, any questions on the forms in particular? Okay, we'll move over to the next form then, and then I'll pause again. All right. Get my screen situated here. So after the setup documents, that intake form, the W-9, and the ACH, if you're using that, is returned to Home Help and processed, then we start to send information, requests for account information forms to you about the case-specific situation. So this doesn't happen until that setup is complete, but when setup's complete, then we start sending you information about specific applicants. We'll send you this request for account information form for each applicant, for each account. And again, funds cannot be issued without that completion of this information. We have to verify the past due amounts as well as some other information. So we'll walk through this form next. So this is the request for account information form. And this first part that you're seeing here, part 1, that should come already completed. And so when you see this form in your inbox, you'll see the property address, the case ID, and some additional information to help you identify who we're inquiring about. The second section, part 2, is what we need to be completed. And it's very important to ensure that you're completing the entire document. Any missing information or inaccuracies will delay the processing. So I'll walk through this line by line. First, we ask, are the payments past due? So kind of getting to that question earlier, payments have to be past due to be eligible. So if you checked no, if you could include additional information if you want, if, for example, they paid their delinquency last week or the property taxes aren't due until May 15th, whatever that additional information is, you can include that in the additional comments box. And then if the answer is no, you can drop down right away to filling out the name of the person completing the form, the phone number, and the signature. If you check yes, the payments are past due, then we'll need you to fill out all the other items here. And so you'll want to check yes, they're past due, enter the number of payments past due, the amount of past due payments, the amount of past due fees, and when the delinquency began. And then that total amount due to reinstate should include that past due amount and any fees. And also want to point out that make sure that amount, that total amount due to reinstate, corresponds to your good through date. So it should include any payments or fees that will become due before that date that you put on there for the reinstatement date. The reinstatement date, we need at least 30 days out. Ideally, include a date 30 to 60 days out. That ensures we have time to follow up with questions if we need to before that date expires. If the good through date is less than 30 days and we aren't able to process payment in time, then we have to ask for a whole new form from you. So ideally, give us as much time as possible, calculate that past due amount and fees through that date and include that in the reinstatement amount. Again, include any additional information in that comments section. That's a good spot to explain past due expenses. For example, if the past due expense lot rent, for example, includes things like cable or utilities or other expenses, that's important for us to know. Some of those items may or may not be eligible for our program. If the utilities and cable are add-ons, not included in everybody's lot rent for the whole property, they will likely be ineligible. So we just need to know the details of those types of expenses so we can assess and make a determination. Also, if you can attach an itemized ledger or any additional information about the fees that you're including in this document, that would be great. So feel free to attach any documentation here, and that will help us with less follow-up with questions. The next section is about foreclosure. So I mentioned that homeowners facing imminent risk of displacement will have their application prioritized. And so you can note that here. Hopefully we've already been alerted of this, but if not, please note it in this document here. And then finally, be sure that you sign the form and include the name of the person completing the form and the best phone number to contact you with questions. And just one more note, you'll see at the bottom of this document that you can return by fax, by email, or by postal service mail. A few different ways to do so. Just wanted to cover a couple of tips about this form before I take questions on this request for account information form. So accuracy is key. Be sure that you include as accurate information as possible. That will reduce the amount of questions we have or need for follow-up information. Be sure the past due amount is accurate and includes all the fees that will be due by that good through date. So if there's a payment coming up in 10 days, be sure to include that in that reinstatement amount. Include a list of itemized expenses so you can attach a ledger or any other document to help explain. Helpful to explain fees that are add-ons for that particular homeowner or if they're bundled for all of the residents of your community. If there's fees, a good idea to attach itemized fees and a quick explanation on what those are for. And then please give us 30 to 60 days for the good through date to allow for time to get in touch with you all, ask questions, get any additional documentation that we need before that date expires so that we can avoid asking for another form from you. And it may seem obvious, but it's easy to miss. Be sure to sign the form at the bottom, include your name and a phone number to reach you at. Okay, questions on the form. I see some general questions that I'm going to hold on until the end, but questions on the form? So Tina asked about timeline for filing eviction while we're processing apps. We should be able to let you know if the resident is facing eviction and we're notified of that, we can prioritize that processing and be able to let you know that they have an application in the pipeline, we're processing it, here's the information we need from you, we're able to prioritize that. So the window of time should be less because we have a team working specifically on those cases. Any other questions on the setup forms or the verification forms? So let's talk about communication. There's a few different ways to reach us. We have a phone number you can give us a call at. We have a chat function on our website. It's that little blue icon. We have a fax number where you can fax forms to us. And we have an email that you can reach us at. So the phone number is 1-800-388-3226. And the fax number is 612-435-4863. And that email that goes to our processing center is info@homehelpmn.org. I would suggest contacting by email for the quickest response. Sometimes our call center can get quite busy, especially at the beginning of the week. All right, so this email for our processing center, the info@homehelpmn.org, that's the email where you'll receive documents from, where you'll send completed forms back to, and where you can send questions to. And a note to please send your emails securely when including private information in order to protect the information that is being sent. Emails from our program are sent encrypted to be able to protect the information that they contain. And we know that some have difficulty accessing those emails. So I want to give a few tips here on how to do so. So when an email comes to you, usually it's the verification for account information that is encrypted. You won't get the setup docs encrypted because they likely don't have any private information. But when we start asking about specific homeowners, we do send those securely. So to open those, you'll need to log on with a one-time code. You'll be prompted to do so when you open the email. The code that you receive is only active for 15 minutes. It's really hard to do this on a smartphone, if not impossible, so switch to a desktop for easier access. And be sure you're using a secure browser. So Google Chrome, Edge, or Firefox are secure browsers that can open these sorts of emails. If you have trouble or need us to send the information in a different way, feel free to reach out to us. Happy to help as much as possible or send it by fax or a different way. All right, so we have a few questions to cover that we got ahead of time. But as you've been doing, submit questions in the chat. I'll also pause and ask if anyone needs to come off mute to ask a question. I know several of you are calling on the phone. If we don't get to your question today, you can email us. This email is the program management team, so different than the processing center. But if you have general questions, you can send them to homehelpmn@state.mn.us. We'll do our best to answer all your questions or get back to you ASAP. All right, someone asked this already, which is fantastic, but let's cover it again. Can an applicant apply more than once? Yes. So if the homeowner is past due on an eligible expense, it could be the same expense that they received or the same account they received assistance before, but became past due again. They may be eligible if they've had another or an ongoing COVID-related financial hardship. So they will be asked to attest to that. And then they will be processed based on the regular eligibility requirements. Next question we got is, why am I getting more forms to fill out, but I already filled them out? So there's two separate steps in our process. There's the first process about payee setup. So when we receive an application for a payee that we haven't worked with before, we will need to get them set up for payment. And so that involves that intake form, the W-9, and the check or the ACH information. That just needs to be completed once, then we'll have it on file for you. So that's that first step. And then after we have the setup complete, you're set up to receive payment, we have everything we need from you on that front, then we'll start sending the request for account information forms about specific applications. So you may get one of these or you may get several, depending on how many folks from your communities are applying. And so each one of those needs to be sent back. I had completed and returned the request for account information form, and now I'm being sent another one. Why? So this is related to that good through date. So if the good through date on the form expires before we can get to issuing payment, we must request that a new form be filled out. So please choose a good through date at least 30 days in the future. That gives us good time to work. If you can do a little bit more than that, 45 days, that's fine too. That gives us time to communicate and get everything figured out and payment processed. Next question, why do I need to include an itemized breakdown of the past due amount? So breaking down what is due for what expenses will help us determine what is eligible and will result in faster processing and payment. So in addition to filling out that summary form we send you, if you can include, the itemized statement, maybe with some notes about what the fees are for or what the fees include, all that information will be super helpful and help reduce the back and forth with questions that we need to ask you. Next question is, can HomeHelpMN prioritize an application for a homeowner facing eviction? Yes, the program prioritizes processing of applications from homeowners who are at imminent risk of displacement, including eviction. So it's important that we learn about this as soon as possible so that those applications get assigned to the right team that is working quickly to address those. And of course, we ask that on the form that we send to you as well, but the sooner we know, the better we can get that application to the right hands. And then who should I contact with questions or if I have a form to return? So return those forms by fax or email. And then if you want to call us, you can give us a call at 1-800-388-3226. And there's also that chat function on our website. All right, other questions that folks have. Let's go into the chat. Thank you, Karen. You've been providing some information. Let's see. So is there a get ready checklist? Yes, we have materials available in Hmong, in Spanish, and Somali, in addition to English. Those materials are on our website, and maybe Karen, you can grab the link for that real quick. You can also change the language of our website and the application portal to those languages as well. So we have the application in Spanish, we have the checklist, we have flyers in Spanish, all sorts of things. So happy to share those. Will we be able to check on status online, like with rent help? So the payees, unless it's a mortgage servicer, doesn't really have the ability to check online. The applicant has access to the status, but unfortunately, we don't have a system that allows payees to check the status. Definitely can check in through email or through phone to check on the status. Happy to answer those questions. Yes, legal fees are eligible for assistance. We do a bit of a reasonable test to just make sure they comply with legal limits, but yes, legal fees are eligible. Covered the question about the timeline for imminent risk applications. Question here about qualified financial hardship. Yes, if someone just lost their job, but didn't have anything to do with the pandemic, that would not be a qualified hardship. However, there may be other things that happened since January 20th or 21st, 2020. So I think, we have on the application, we have check boxes on things that an applicant may have experienced. So increased expenses, loss of wages and whatnot related to the pandemic. So while that specific situation does not meet the definition of the qualified financial hardship, I would encourage folks to kind of look and think about if they've had impacts from that point of time until now. Question here, if someone rents a home of ours, do you cover the lot rent portion of the rent payment? So the folks applying have to be homeowners for this program. And so they need to be owning their home and then they can apply for the lot rent. So they cannot be renters and be eligible for this program. So just homeowners. Is there a way to see what an application looks like, including the checklist just mentioned? Yep, you bet. We have printable applications on our website. We can drop the link in here. You can also reach out to us afterwards. You can see what it looks like and all the questions and forms and signatures required. If someone received rent help, can they still apply for home help? Yes, if they are homeowners, they can. So that gets a little bit tricky. It depends on the situation, but we have had some situations where folks own their home, did receive assistance for lot rent from rent help, and then fell behind and applied for home help and received assistance from us. So it can't be assistance for the same delinquency. It can be the same account, but not the same time period. So that's really what we're looking for is the home ownership qualification, and then what time frame is the assistance being asked for. Needs to be a different time frame. All right, other questions from folks? If anybody wants to come off mute, feel free to do so. Thanks, Karen, for sharing in the chat. So we're sharing some information from our website, some direct links, but homehelpmn.org is where you'll find a whole bunch of information. I think I may have heard someone come off chat. Does anybody have a question? All right. So feel free to enter them in chat if you think of something. I wanted to let you know that we are hosting some application workshops. And so we will be in St. Cloud on April 11th, 4:30 to 7:30, helping folks with applications. And we have a whole bunch of marketing materials. So if you want files, flyers or applications, document checklists, we have lots of different things that we can share with you, and we love your support in getting the word out. So just let us know. If you have materials that you would like, email us at homehelpmn@state.mn.us, and we'd love to share those files with you. And then also we have e-news. We send something out about once a month, but the important thing to note is that we will be sending an announcement out if we move to a wait list through this. So if you're not signed up for e-news, you might want to do so just to be sure you get those alerts. All right, and just quickly, thank you all for being here. It was great that you could join us. If you have questions, check out that website, get in touch with us. We're happy to help. And we're so appreciative that you joined us today. Thank you so much.